After working in the guide dog industry for 10 years, one thing that I experienced time and time again was that dogs are incredibly pattern cognizant, meaning they're very adept at recognizing and following predictable patterns. One example is when one of the guide dogs that I was training started indicating and stopping in front of a bubble tea store that I occasionally went to when I was training that particular dog. He'd stop in front of it and be like, "Hey, you seem to visit here pretty often. Are we stopping here today?" You might have a problem when your guide dog is calling you out on your bubble tea obsession. Knowing that our dogs are particularly good at recognizing patterns, in this video, I'm going to show you exactly how we can use this to our advantage in our training. I'm going to show you how I might use this to train the retrieve, as well as show you an example of how I might introduce a novel object to a service dog using pattern work. And even if you aren't training the retrieve, or you're not training a service dog for that matter, I'm going to show you how you can use patterns in your training to get faster and more efficient training results. And who doesn't want that? Hi, I'm Laura from Doggy U, and I'm a certified guide dog mobility instructor, service dog trainer, and trick trainer. And today I'm going to show you why I love training with patterns. So one behavior that some handlers struggle with is training the retrieve. And one way to demystify this process for our dog is to teach them a pattern for going out, grabbing an object, and immediately returning to handler.
Okay, so what I'm trying to achieve when training the retrieve is for my dog to go out, grab an object, immediately turn back towards me, and return to me. The grabbing of the object is only one part of that whole picture. First, we want to teach the pattern. So to start, I can take the object out of the equation and just pattern this loop using a food toss game. I start by cueing find it and then tossing the food away, something that she already knows. Then immediately after she eats it, I call her to me. During that process, I can extend my hand and use a hand touch if that's a skill that my dog already knows, and that'll get them all the way to me and set them up to eventually deliver an item to my hand. Then I mark and reward with the opposite hand, and then give her the find it cue and toss another piece of food and repeat. Here she learns to go out, do a thing, and immediately return to me. That's the start of your distance retrieve. You'll notice I use a platform for this. Starting with the platform, a piece of equipment she's already drawn to due to previous work on platforms, gives her a really clear guide to come all the way into me. If you've never shaped a dog to go to a platform, I actually have a video on that I can put up in the corner here for you to click on. If your dog needs a little additional guidance, play this game in a hallway with the doors closed to limit your dog's options. You can play all these games either in a hallway with non-slip footing or use barriers to create a chute for your dog to easily be able to complete the pattern. Next, I'm going to do the exact same thing but with a toy. This is actually how I start a lot of my toy play with a young puppy in a hallway like I'm doing here with Baby Whip. If we limit the options, we create a pattern where it's easy for the puppy to return to us and learn to return the ball. With the toy, I'm going to toss it out, ask the dog to go fetch it up, and once she returns to the platform, I mark and feed a cookie, and then I toss it again. Now I'm using the same pattern to pattern that return of the toy. Next, we do the same thing, but with an object we want retrieved. I like to choose something easy for them to get that isn't a toy. A dumbbell can work really well for this because it's easy to pick up off the floor, but today I'm using a medication bag. Once she's returned it to me, I mark and reward. Breaking out the pattern from the retrieve can really help your dog understand how to go out, how to get the thing, and then how to immediately return to handler. As they get better at the skill, you can practice different objects and dead retrieves, where the tossing of the object isn't part of the skill. Using the beginning exercise as a warm-up can be a really great way to start your distance retrieve sessions.
Now, this isn't the only training that I would do if I was working on the retrieve. It's just a small part of the entire picture. I'd first want to teach the dog to hold and pick up an object. And I actually have a 3-part series on training the retrieve that would be really helpful for those of you that want to train it. It's over on Patreon, and I actually made the first part of the series totally free. So if you join at the free membership level over on Patreon, you'll get access to that 50-minute webinar totally free. So I'll link that down below for you to check out. So that's one way that we can use a pattern to develop a retrieve and a quick return to handler from our dogs. Now here's another way that I might use patterns to expose a service dog to a new or novel object, like for instance, walking next to a shopping cart. But before I show you that training session, I would love if you could head on down and boop that like button. Doing so helps positively reinforce me for making these videos and allows me to make more free and low-cost resources. So you head on down and click that thumbs up, and I'll get on with the training. One of the first exercises I do when I'm looking to teach a dog to walk politely on a loose leash is what I call the join up exercise. It's basically where you walk in a circle, and anytime the dog chooses to walk near you, you mark, reward, and toss a cookie on the ground. They then eat that cookie off the ground and run back up to join up with you again. Generally, whatever you reward, the dog will do more of. So pretty soon the dog is choosing to join up or hang out right next to you, which is an excellent foundation for loose leash walking. You can see the full video of that exercise right up here. Then once they're choosing to walk in that nice heel position, I progress to training the figure 8 pattern. I have a full video on that training too, so I'll link it down below in the description. So with those two exercises, the dog has now learned to walk nicely next to you when you're walking in a circle and in a figure 8 pattern. I often practice these skills if my dog is getting disconnected in a new environment, because when I do, the dog is like, oh, hey, I recognize this, I've done this before. And that predictability can help us reconnect in that particular moment. But what about when I want to add something novel to the equation? After introducing the dog to the object, I can use patterns to help them acclimate to this new scenario.
For instance, here's a video of a service dog in training, Navi. The training goal for this session was to introduce her to walking next to a shopping cart. I can facilitate this integration by bringing that new item into the predictable pattern that she's already familiar with and has a lot of value. By integrating the carriage into a predictable circle pattern and then the figure 8 pattern, she learns to walk next to this novel stimulus with ease because she knows what to expect because she's done this pattern before. We're only changing one new thing, splitting the eventual training of walking by a cart inside a store into smaller chunks. Once she's acclimated to the cart within the pattern, I can then start changing directions and eventually practice with the additional distractions that an actual store presents, slowly building on each successful session.
So there you go. There's a little intro to patterns that you can use to help complement your training and help your dog be more successful. So I'd love to hear down in the comments, what patterns does your dog recognize and how can you use those patterns to make your training more efficient? And hey y'all, if you liked this video, you'll probably like this one too, so you should click on it now. You all have an awesome day and happy training.